All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us during the Lytham Partners Winter 2021 Investor Conference and what we're aptly calling our 2022 Vision Event. My name is Robert Blum, Managing Partner of Lytham Partners. During the course of this fireside chat, we're going to welcome Precision Optics, ticker symbol of PEYE, on the OTCQB, and their CEO, Dr. Joe Forkey. Before we begin, for those not familiar, Lytham Partners is one of the country's leading investor relations firms with more than 2 decades of corporate access experience. We have built one of the industry's most diverse and effective platforms for connecting small cap companies with high quality and focused institutional investors while creating a framework of best practices in all aspects of investor relations. Today's fireside chat is hopefully another example where we can provide value to multiple constituents. We'll dive into questions in a moment, but one final item I wanted to mention here. I want to remind everyone that Precision Optics will be available for one-on-one meetings later this week. If you've not already signed up, you can send me an email. That's Blum, B-L-U-M, at lythampartners.com, or you can visit the website at lythampartners.com/virtual and click on the one-on-one meeting request button. So with that said, let's begin. Joe, thank you again for joining us here. Let's start with a brief overview of the company and your background.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Robert. It's great to be here. Precision Optics is, as the name implies, an optics company. But in particular, what that means for us is that we design and develop technology and products that are used by a number of different industries to see things, really. And so we can work on systems and telecommunications where we transfer data across optical signals. We can also work in medical and defense where we create very small cameras or create systems that can bring light to places that are difficult to get to. Over the years, since the company was founded in 1982, we've been involved in all of those areas, and we continue to be involved in all of those areas today. But the majority of the work that we do today, I'd say about 75% of it is in the medical space, where we make very small cameras and very specialized cameras, mainly for minimally invasive surgery. So that's a little bit of overview of the company. My background is technical originally. I worked in academia for a number of years in applied physics and ultimately biophysics. And I discovered after being at a university for many years that I really enjoyed working on the devices that we were making, even more so than the science we were discovering. So I joined POC in 2003 on the technical side and took over as CEO in 2011.
Perfect. And so as you just mentioned, your technology is what I would define as an enabler, right, for medical device and defense companies around the world. Talk about what it is that you're bringing to the table that others simply cannot, or why they choose Precision Optics.
Yeah. So the most basic answer to that question is our core technology. So we, at our heart, are really a technology company. We made some decisions a number of years ago that as a small company, we would focus on a small number of very specific areas where we felt we had some competitive advantage at the time going into it. And a competitive advantage that we've developed over the years through the further development of these specific technologies. And the 2 specific areas within optics that we have focused on are very small optics. So we can make some optics as small as 50 microns, which is about the width of a human hair. And then the second area is in the area of 3D optics. These are the kinds of optical systems that are required to be able to effectively see in 3D, if you like, or to be able to record camera images in 3D. Just like when you go to a movie theater and see a 3D movie, we can do the same thing with very, very small cameras that can go inside of the body. So those are really the 2 sort of specific areas within the general field of optics that we focus on. And it's our unique capability in those areas that ultimately, I think, drives most of our customers to us. Now, beyond that, we've surrounded that core technology with a number of other beneficial attributes, if you like, of the company that are beneficial to our customers. And these are all of the requirements that are necessary to take this core enabling technology, put it into a product for our customers, and then continue to manufacture that product for our customers for many, many years. So we've built a capability that allows us to take products from the very early, what I call conception stage, all the way through to mass manufacture. Part of that is through our technical teams that are here in Massachusetts and now in New Hampshire as well. It's also with our regulatory teams that are in all three of our locations, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Texas. And it's through our robust worldwide supply chain that is managed in large part by our Ross Optical division that's down in Texas. So really the ability to take a project from the early conception stage all the way through to mass manufacture is a unique capability. Combine that with unique technology we have, and we found that customers come to us and tell us that we do things for them that no one else in the world can do.
So on that point, a few years ago, you transitioned the business model to work closely with key medical device and the defense companies that you mentioned at the very early stage of the design of these projects. Talk about what that has done for the business and how it sort of enhances your outlook going forward.
Yeah, sure. So really what that decision was based on was a solid understanding of what it is as a small company that we do best, and then making a clear decision to focus on those particular capabilities. So there have been times in the distant past when we worked on designing our own medical product and selling it directly to hospitals, for instance. That requires a whole bunch of other capabilities and very large investments. And so we made the decision that we would be the technology company, and we would partner with our customers who have specific ways of using this technology and putting it into products that that can benefit the ultimate end user. The benefit of this business model is that we continue to develop our core competency, and we offer access to that core technology, that core competency to our customers. It really becomes a partnership. And the business model is set up so that we make the early on investments in the technology. We go out and we find our customers who have a particular place where they could use that technology. They pay us to put our technology into the size, shape, and color that they need, even though we maintain ownership of the core intellectual property. And then together we bring that product to market, and we continue to manufacture that product for them for many, many years if the product is successful. The profits from that manufacturing side of the business, then we can use to support the ongoing investment in the core capabilities and the core technology to stay on the cutting edge of the technology. So it ends up being a really good set of partnerships that we have with our customers, and it's really a win-win. They get access to the technology that they couldn't get otherwise, and we have a vehicle through which we can derive business and derive profits from that technology and feed that back into staying on the cutting edge of the technology.
So one of those cutting edge areas that you mentioned has been the single-use medical device development, which has been a big investment area for you. Expand a bit on what your focus is and what milestones you might hope to achieve here in 2022.
Yeah, sure. So single-use medical devices is an idea that's been around for a long time. And it has had a couple of false starts over the years. We did our first single-use product, 7 or 8 years ago. And while we were successful with the piece that we put together, our customer had issues on some of the parts of the system that they were building. It's pretty clear now, I think, for lots of reasons, which we don't have time to go into, but I'm happy to talk to people about. It's pretty clear that the medical device market has turned the corner, and that single-use products are really the way of the future. POC came to the single-use market through our micro optics or our small optics efforts. Remember, I said that we were very focused in the technology that we developed. It turns out that for a number of reasons, making smaller systems has some cost benefits, and cost is a critical aspect of single-use. So we have been working on a number of single-use projects. In particular, there's one we've talked about publicly before, which is an ophthalmic product, which is used to do surgery on the eyeball. And we've been working on this particular project with our customer, with our partner, for the last 3 years. And we expect that will go into production sometime in the next 12 months. This project has really been a really great opportunity for us to understand what goes into designing and building and supporting the financials of single-use products. And so while this is the first one that we think will come to market, we have a number of other single-use products that are in the pipeline. And the experience we've had with this one is helping us to arrange the business model for these other ones going forward. So the real milestone will be launching this product in 2022. And then beyond that, I think everyone should expect to see that we'll be doing more and more single-use projects as we move forward.
Okay. Yeah, let's go back to the business model shift that you made, and you've seen your pipeline expand rather dramatically over the last year. You made an acquisition, which we'll touch on in a moment here, which accentuated that pipeline expansion. But help investors understand what the correlation is between the pipeline and why they should be looking at the pipeline and the potential revenue growth in the coming years and what that might look like.
Yeah. So consistent with our business model, we bring customers in who are looking to build a product or have a product designed and built for them that is a product that requires our particular technology. And so the way that we do that is by taking the projects through what we call our engineering pipeline. And the idea here is that when a customer first comes to us, they have an idea of what they need, but they don't know how to accomplish it. And so we go through a pretty extensive vetting process early on to decide whether the customer's product, number one, can benefit from our technology, and number two, whether they in their product are likely to be successful in the market. And so we look at things, as diverse as the regulatory requirements for the product, as well as how they're being financed. So we go through a pretty sophisticated filtering process, but once our customers get through that process with us and we decide to take them on as a customer, we start by working with them to design the product in a way that will satisfy their requirements using the technology that we've already developed. In terms of understanding the importance of the product pipeline or the engineering pipeline, it's really the pipeline that drives the growth of our manufacturing revenue, which ultimately will lead to growth in the overall company. And the reason for this is that typically it will take anywhere from 1 to 3 or maybe even 4 years to develop a new product in the medical device space. And once it gets into production, it can continue in production for literally decades. We have 2 products today, one of which we've been making for the same customer day in and day out for over 10 years. Another one we've been making for the same product, same customer for over 20 years. So the idea is that the pipeline is really the feeder into manufacturing, and it's the increase in the number of products that we have in manufacturing that drives the overall growth of the company. In terms of sort of ballpark numbers, people can think about pipeline projects as contributing to manufacturing at a level of about $1 million a year or so. So as we move forward, we expect that we'll have somewhere between 2 or 3 on the low side and maybe 4 or 5 on the higher side, products coming out of the engineering pipeline and going into production each year. Once they get into production, of course, many of these products will grow in size and extent. And so the revenue that comes from those can continue to grow even beyond that more or less $1 million a year that they start when they come out of the pipeline.
All right, great. That's helpful. Let's transition. You just made an acquisition of a company called Lighthouse Imaging. Talk us through first the thought process behind the acquisition and what it is they bring to the combined precision optics company.
Yeah. So Lighthouse Imaging is a company that we've known for a long, long time, as is the case in many specific business areas. We knew them quite well, even though we were what I would describe as friendly competitors. So there were times when we would work together. There were more times, frankly, that we would be competing against each other. But the folks knew each other and had a lot of respect for each other. And we had talked over the years about the possibility of combining the companies. And finally, just a few months ago, we decided that this is now the right time to do this. Let me explain why we believed it was the right time to do it and why we're all pretty excited about the merger of these 2 companies. So Obviously, there's always a benefit when you're in a small space and you combine two competitors. We've reduced the competitive landscape in I think a fairly significant way, because they were probably our prime competitor. More importantly than that, in my mind, is the fact that they would work on medical devices, but they would come at the medical device with a core technology that was on the electronic imaging side. And as the market moves more and more in the direction of solid state imaging, so-called CMOS sensors, the imaging side of it, the electronic imaging side of it, and electronic processing and such has become more and more important. On the POC side, as I've already been talking about, our real core technology is on the optics side of it, on designing and building the optical systems that bring the light into the solid state sensor, into the CMOS sensor. Now POC without Lighthouse was already doing some work on the electronic imaging side of things, and Lighthouse Imaging, before the merger with POC, was doing some optical design and manufacturing work. But clearly, each of the two companies had their specialty that they had developed particular technology and capabilities around. Putting the two of them together really gives us an even stronger set of offerings that we can provide to our customers. And in fact, the customer response, even in the last 2 months, has been uniformly positive. We even had some customers who said to us, well, we were talking to both of you, we saw you as competitors, but we think it's great that you're working together. We're definitely going to work with you guys on this next project. So from a sort of strategic standpoint, that's why it made sense. It always is important when you have small companies like ours that it makes sense not only from the strategic standpoint, but from the financial standpoint. And in this case, I think we came up with an arrangement that worked for everyone. Importantly, the owners of Lighthouse took as a significant portion of the purchase price stock in the combined company. The second thing that is critically important for small companies like ours when you do acquisitions and mergers is that the people are comfortable with it. And after all, as a technology company, we rely heavily on the capabilities of our people. And I'm pleased that the senior management at Lighthouse has continued with the combined company. And I can say with a lot of confidence, as I said in the beginning of my answer to this question, we've known those folks for a long time. They've known us. We have similar attitudes towards how you deal with employees and customers and vendors and such. And ultimately the reason why we're doing the work that we're doing. So there are similar cultures, and this has borne itself out in the last couple of months, even since the announcement, with really a large part of our two groups starting to work together very naturally. It's happening from the ground up, which is really encouraging for me to see.
Perfect. Now, the acquisition occurred in October, so you've got to report a quarter where Lighthouse is included in the financials. Help investors understand what the business is going to look like from a revenue standpoint, maybe historically, and what maybe some of the drivers are within their business that could be helping to expand their revenues over the coming quarters.
Yeah, sure. So we'll report with our amendment to the 8K in just a couple of weeks, I think, some very specific numbers with pro formas and such. But I can say just in general to give people a sense that Lighthouse's operation in what is our fiscal year 2021, which ended last June, so it runs July 1st to June 30th. Their revenues were around $4.5 to $5 million. They had a few $100,000 in net income and a little bit more in EBITDA. And they've been growing fairly substantially over the last 12 months. We expect that growth to continue. A large part of that growth is coming from exactly what I was talking about in one of the earlier questions, which is that they also have an engineering pipeline. So putting the two together bolsters that pipeline, makes it even bigger, gives us even more opportunity for bringing products out into the marketplace, into production. And in particular, they have 4 products that are right on the verge of being launched into production. So that will also help to drive their growth, and really now I need to say to drive our growth as a combined company. Just to give people a quick sense, those 4 products are in a number of different areas within minimally invasive surgery, within medical devices. In particular, they're in the areas of arthroscopy, robotic laparoscopy, ophthalmology, and otoscopy. So you can see it's not just one specific area. It's a pretty broad set of opportunities across the board in minimally invasive surgery. Again, similar to the case with precision optics.
Sort of transitioning here, you've managed the business, I think most people would consider to be rather prudently over the last 2 years during the course of the pandemic. But at the same time, you've expanded your pipeline, your capacity, you've grown revenues. How should we think about the balance between investments and profitability on a go-forward basis?
Yeah. So anyone who looks back at our history will see that we reached a pretty major milestone in, I think it was around 2018, just before the pandemic. And that was that we became cash flow positive for the first time in many, many years. We made a decision at that point that we would use some of those profits to invest in the future of the company. And in particular, we made some pretty critical investments in the sales and marketing side of things, as well as the technology engineering side of things, as well as some infrastructure IT kinds of resources that we needed in order to be able to build the company to the next level. Now, when COVID hit, it had a pretty significant impact on the entire medical device market, and it had an impact on some of our existing products. And so we pulled back on making additional investments, but we continued to maintain the investments we had already made in order to not lose the value that we had already invested in those things. So that's the reason, I believe, why we've continued to see some growth in the pipeline, even while our production revenue, because of the pandemic, was impacted negatively. Going forward, I think what people should expect to see is that as we come out of the effects of COVID, although it will take some time, many more months, maybe even some more years before we get back to where we were at, we have made enough progress, and now with the acquisition and the combination with Lighthouse, that we expect to be cash flow positive, EBITDA positive in the near term. And we will continue to make the kinds of investments we made before in order to support the larger organization and to support the growth that we believe is coming.
I think this question sort of summarized a lot of what you just mentioned here, but over the last couple of quarters, at least on all your conference calls and such, you've talked about the strategic plan of Precision Optics. For those that haven't been on some of the conference calls, walk through the components of that plan.
Yeah, sure. So there are really 4 elements, broadly speaking. The first one is to grow the sales capability. And as I just commented, we did make some critical investments there, and we do see them paying off. The idea here is that in this first bucket, growing the sales capability allows us to capture more opportunities for new customers. So it allows us to bring more potential customers into what I would call the customer funnel. The second area is growing our technical resource, both in terms of the engineering team, but also in terms of continuing to develop our own IP. There's really 2 aspects to that, both of which having to do with customers. Growing the engineering team allows us to build our pipeline larger. And of course, since the pipeline is a thing that feeds the production, which feeds the ongoing growth of the company, we want to grow that as large as we can. So we bolstered that a bit when we made some investments, and we continue to do that. Anyone who's watched us for a while will notice that our pipeline, even before the acquisition, was growing pretty nicely. And that's really because the engineering team has grown, which means that of those additional potential customers that come into the funnel, we can bring more of them into the engineering pipeline. Also in this category is the continuous development of our own IP that obviously is the core technology, the core capability of the company. So we want to continue to always stay on the cutting edge with the technology and the IP. The third bucket, the third area, is to invest and update our production capabilities, both in order to support the increase. And now, after customers come through the funnel and go through the pipeline, they get into production, we need to be able to support that increase in need for production. There's a sort of specific sub area here, which again, we talked about a little bit, which is to build production capabilities that are appropriate for single-use products. And this in particular is in the area of automation. This is one of the ways that we can drive costs down for single-use products where the overall cost is a critical component to the successful global business model. And then the fourth area is to be able to augment our skills and our own capabilities through partnerships and through mergers and acquisitions. And as we just talked about, we had a really great development in that area just recently.
So to sort of wrap things up here, what are the key milestones that investors should be looking for in 2022? And if we were to sit here 12 months from now, what are the biggest risks to achieving those goals?
Yeah, sure. So overall, I think what people should be looking for is overall growth of the company. As I mentioned before, an increase in operations to get back to profitability after coming through the COVID pandemic, which, as I say, impacted our markets fairly significantly. I think along with that, the couple of things that people should be looking for is a successful integration of the Lighthouse imaging team. This is a critical acquisition merger, if you like, of POC. And so we'll be working very hard to make sure that that goes smoothly. So far, things are going quite well. And then finally, the launch of up to 4 or 5 new projects. Now that we're a combined company with Lighthouse, the number of projects we should be pulling out of the pipeline and into production should be increasing. So those are the things I think people should be looking at. The risks in each of those, I think, are fairly obvious. With COVID, of course, with these new variants coming and things up and down, there's obviously a risk there. We've been pretty successful in keeping the operation running during COVID, but of course, our customers' requirements for products that are already in production can fluctuate up and down a little bit because of that. On the Lighthouse imaging integration, as I said, everything's going quite well, and we've known this group for a long time, so we're quite confident that this is going to go smoothly. But whenever you're doing an integration of 2 companies, there's always some risk. And then on the launch of 4 to 5 projects, we've gotten pretty good at looking at these projects before we take them on. Lighthouse had a very similar process that they had gone through, so we're quite confident that these products will go into production. Nonetheless, there are some outside forces like FDA regulatory approval. Those things have been going a little more slowly recently because of the pandemic. So there are some risks there, but again, we think that we have them pretty well under control.
All right. Anything else to sort of have investors take away from today's discussion?
No, I think that was a pretty good summary. I guess with all of your questions, I guess if I were to summarize, I would just say anyone who's been watching our company for any extended period of time, I think will see why we're so excited about where we're at and where we're going. We have been growing now for a number of years. We had a little hiccup with COVID. We managed through that and are back on a growth trajectory. I think the markets that we work in have lots of opportunity for growth. And now with this new acquisition, we think that that's really a step function in our ability to access and take advantage of the growth opportunities that we have out there. So we're pretty excited.
Fantastic. Well, Joe, thank you very much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. To anyone out there that has not already signed up for a one-on-one meeting, again, you can send me an email. Again, that's Blum, BLUM at lythampartners.com, or visit the website at lythampartners.com/virtual. Click on the one-on-one meeting request button, and we will get you taken care of. We hope you all enjoy the conference. Joe, thank you again very much.
Thank you, Robert.